Hey guys, what's up? It's Dean. Welcome to Manful Yoga. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 uses for yoga blocks. Specifically, we'll be using a cork yoga block. I like these because they're a bit more dense. They have more support. They have more resistance if you're using them for that. And we are launching our own cork yoga mat, which is now available. You can check out the link in the description for more info. All right, straight into this. So we've got 5 different uses for yoga blocks. I'm going to go through just a couple of examples with each. This isn't a comprehensive list of all the ways that you can use a yoga block, but this will give you some great ideas as to how you can incorporate a block into your own yoga practice. And there's a big misconception that yoga blocks are only for inflexibility, that the only reason you would use a yoga block is if you're not as flexible as other people. And that's actually not true. You can use a yoga block to make it more difficult as well, and I'll show you how right now. So the first way that you can use a yoga block is to bring the ground up to you. So this is the primary reason if we're using it for inflexibility reasons, if you're not as flexible as an experienced yogi would be. So a good example of this is bringing the ground up to you in a standing forward fold. So normally, if you could do a forward fold and touch the ground, you would keep your knees maybe slightly bent, not locked it all the way, and you'd be able to reach down and kind of touch the floor here. But if you're newer and you're not flexible and you want to be able to touch your hands to something, then you can use a block in front of you like this. And this way you can at least kind of rest your hands and you don't have to worry about your hands just kind of dangling here. And this allows you to do that stretch or that posture without having to have as much hamstring flexibility. Another good example is a triangle pose, right? So triangle pose, if you weren't as flexible as someone else and you were reaching down and touching the ground, you would kind of notice that your core is collapsing here, right? So if you look at my stomach here, you can kind of tell that my chest is collapsing if I'm not as flexible as I need to be to reach the floor. I really would want to have my back flat here. I want to have my core nice and tight if I can touch the floor. If I can't do that, the block is helpful because now I can keep that good technique through my core and I don't have to worry about my hand just kind of hanging off in space. So those are some good examples. And then lastly, other variation of this is if you're doing something like a down dog or a child's pose and you have tight shoulders, maybe you can't get your hands down the way that you want to, you can use the blocks to kind of bring the ground up higher, and this way we can get a better shoulder stretch if you're not as flexible in the shoulders or if you want a deeper shoulder stretch. So that's the first way to use the blocks. The second way to use the blocks is with added resistance. So we can use the blocks to make an exercise more difficult from a strength perspective. A few examples of the way that we can do this. You can do it as weights. So we can hold the blocks straight out like this. If we're doing a warrior 2, we can hold the blocks up, and this can just challenge your shoulder strength, your shoulder endurance a little bit more, as opposed to just holding your arms out. We can also squeeze the block between your hands. So if you're doing, let's say, a standing side bend, we can hold the block together between the hands and press that block between the hands to make it just a bit more challenging for us. And this way we can build a bit more strength in the shoulders. And then one other example I'll give here, one exercise I really like doing is scapular stability work from a prone position. So if we're flat on the chest and we're lifting our arms up to build shoulder strength, we can add those blocks for a little bit more resistance to make it more challenging, right? So instead of just lifting my arms, now I'm actually lifting the blocks as well. So the yoga blocks are also really helpful for added resistance. Cork yoga blocks are a bit more effective just because they're heavier. The third way that we can use the blocks is as a grip alternative. So putting your hands flat on the ground for a lot of people is painful. Right? So if you're doing a plank and it hurts you to do a plank with your hands flat on the ground, that's due to a lack of wrist strength and wrist mobility. But a quick fix for that is changing the grip. One thing we can do is put fists on the ground, but you can also hold on to the blocks, right? So we could squeeze the blocks like this, and that just changes the grip. We can also put the blocks face down like so, and then we can kind of make more of a fist position like so. So using the blocks as a way to change your grip is another way to use blocks. The fourth way to use blocks is as a prop to rest on, and there's a few different ways that we can do this. One really good example is using a block for a supported bridge. So this allows us to take a light back bend and change it into a restorative pose instead of an active pose. So I can do a bridge, place this directly above the sacrum, and just kind of rest there. Instead of having to hold myself with strength, I'm allowed to use that block, and then I can rest in this extended position for the spine. This is a really nice way to restore posture if you've been working or driving or sitting down a lot. Another way that we can do this is sitting on the block. So most guys, if you're new to yoga, or even if you've been doing it for years, difficult to sit in a cross-legged or an easy pose with your butt flat on the floor. So using the block allows you to sit in an easy pose or a cross-legged position with your back being in a nice position, right? Without your back rounding out and poking behind you. So sitting on the block is another way that we can use it as a prop. And then another, or kind of the final example I'll give here, a lot of guys have neck and shoulder mobility issues, and it's difficult for them to lay flat on the ground and be able to look straight up at the ceiling. Usually what happens is they kind of look back like this at the wall behind them. So we can use a block to rest your head on, and that way you can look straight up instead of, if you have that lack of neck and shoulder mobility, kind of looking back behind you. And then the last use of the block that I'll describe in this video is standing on the block. And this only works with a cork yoga block. A foam block isn't firm enough, which is, again, one of the reasons I like cork blocks. So with a block, you can actually stand on it. So this is nice for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're doing balance work, if we want to work on balance and not have to worry about our foot kind of touching the ground or having to move our hips or offset the hips when you're kind of moving into positions, or you're kind of moving or flowing from one position to the next. If you were to do this on the ground and you were to keep your legs straight, your foot would just hit the ground as you're transitioning. But with the block, you can actually do this posture and your foot won't hit the ground, and you can keep your hips squared the whole time. So using the blocks as something to stand on is nice. We can also do calf raises with the block, which is a really great exercise for your ankles. Right, so we're just going to find a wall, something to support yourself. You're going to stand on the blocks, come down with the heels, and then come up all the way up onto the toes. All right, so that's another thing that we can do with the blocks. And then lastly, if you want to make a forward fold a bit more challenging, you can stand on the blocks. So this is kind of the opposite of that first reason, but if you want to make a forward fold more challenging, you can stand on the blocks, and that way you'll be able to challenge yourself to reach further down than you would if you were just standing directly on the floor. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you don't already have a cork yoga block set, I highly recommend getting one. We have them available on Amazon and also on our website at shop.manfulyoga.com. The Manful Yoga versions of these have the Manful Yoga logo as well as a clever phrase on them. Ours say, "Control your breath" on one side and "Control your body" on the other. The Body by Yoga version of these have phrases like "side piece" or "lean on me." So kind of some tongue-in-cheek jokes there to go with your cork yoga block. And again, these are helpful for not just yoga, but also other types of exercise. Highly useful. Highly recommend that you have some of these in your home workout area. I invite you to purchase these at the first link in the description below. If you haven't already subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Leave a comment if you have some feedback or a question. Like the video if you found it useful, and I hope to see you on another video soon.